time on CBS. Heading out to Eugene Autzen Stadium as Oregon welcomes a visit from Curt Cignetti and the Indiana Hoosiers. There are a lot of different angles to this game that we want to get to here in this breakdown. Bud Elliott, I'm going to let you get first word. Where will this game be decided as these two top 10 teams are matched up against each other?
I mean, this is the quarterback matchup of the year, right? Like, these are the two guys who are being mocked at the top of all the mock drafts right now. Fernando Mendoza for Indiana, Dante Moore for Oregon. And they're actually, in some ways, very similar quarterbacks, man. These guys see it, and they don't wait. Like, they really see the field well. They get the ball out quickly. They get a lot of yards after the catch. They deliver a nice catchable ball. They can drive the ball to most of the parts of the field. You see here on our screen comparison, numbers are really similar. These guys are incredibly hard to stop, man. I am super excited to watch this. They're just so good, and they play such a clean game. It looks like you're watching two pros when they play. And like, Dante Moore could not have been more impressive there going into Happy Valley against what is still a pretty damn good Penn State defense and doing what he did in kind of his first major road start since he started for UCLA at Utah.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, these have been two of the best offenses in the country so far this season, and their quarterbacks are big reasons why. They're explosive. They finish their drives. They take care of the football. They rarely go 3 and out, so they're always giving their defense time to, catch their breath and get ready for the next drive. And I think that that's going to be a very interesting thing and a great matchup just to watch. But the one matchup in particular that I want to watch in this game will be Oregon's offensive line versus the Indiana defensive line. Because if we go back to that Penn State game, if you've watched all season long, like, Oregon's clearly doing a running back by committee. They don't know who their best running back is yet. Dan Lanning isn't picking a guy. They're just kind of going with the hot hand. And I think part of the problem that they've had is in the run game, I don't feel like their offensive line has been nearly as strong as it has been in pass protection. But we saw last week, shock of all shocks, against a really good Penn State defense in their last game. It was probably their offensive line's worst performance of the season. We saw Dante Moore being pressured far more often than we'd seen it happen in any of the other games. And this is an Indiana defensive line who a few weeks ago completely overwhelmed Illinois' offensive line. So can we see that kind of performance for them again to put Dante Moore into tough positions? Because I do think that from front to back, this is a very good Indiana defense. But D'Angelo Pons in the secondary, I think, is very good. Outside of him, I think they're gettable. And D'Angelo Pons is expected to be back and healthy and playing in this game. He did not play against Iowa last week, and thankfully Iowa's passing game stinks, so it didn't really hurt Indiana all that much. But I just feel like that if Indiana can get pressure on Moore and maybe force him to make him uncomfortable, make some mistakes, the Hoosiers have a shot to pull off the upset here.
If Penn State in a whiteout couldn't make Dante Moore uncomfortable, I have my doubts that Indiana can do that at Autzen, where you have crowd control. You're going to have a much more calm environment. Now, granted, they could do that with pressures. They could have more success getting home, but he was really good. I'll ask you guys a question because I was thinking this out loud. Who do you trust more in this game out of the quarterbacks, Dante Moore or Fernando Mendoza?
Dante Moore.
Dante.
Same.
Dante, because he's at home.
Right, because he's at home. I also think he might just be better. He looks special. And Fernando Mendoza was on the road one time at Iowa. Their numbers came, drastically down. He didn't exactly light them up. Did have an interception in that game. So I'm kind of curious to see how Mendoza handles a road environment that is going to be similar to what he faced against Iowa, with better personnel on the other side of the field too.
Danny, tell me is this something or is this nothing? So last year, Indiana played 2 ranked teams, lost both those games. Now, they picked up a ranked win against Illinois earlier, and it was by an extremely large margin. Is it fair? Is it something or is it nothing? Indiana, when they take a step up in competition, the performance might be a little bit different.
Yeah, I think it's still a fair critique. And that's unfortunately the brand bias that comes into play. Like, if this was any other team, a Penn State who had put up that time, we'd be raving about them as a national championship contender. But because Indiana is new to this neighborhood, they kind of have to prove it and stay around a little bit longer. So I do think it is a worthy criticism question for Indiana. How do you stack up against the very elite teams in college football? And this will be a great opportunity for them to prove that they belong.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to be the Indiana hater here, but when they played real bodies last year, they lost, right? And if Penn State had done what Indiana had done to Illinois, we'd say, why is James Franklin being a jerk and running up the score and continuing to throw the ball late in the game to make this look even bigger when Illinois was without 4 of its 5 starters in the secondary? Like, Indiana's a damn good football team, but they do not recruit at the level that an Oregon or an Ohio State recruits at. And so it's a valid criticism to say, hey, we don't know how they're going to stack up when they play real pro bodies this year. They haven't faced them yet, right? Now, Illinois has a couple, but ultimately they were so thin on the back end. And again, playing 4 or 5 backups at one point in the secondary that we don't know how Indiana is really going to look against a team that has real athletes on defense. Obviously, Iowa's defense is somewhat down this year, and Indiana was kind of pedestrian against them there. I do think Mendoza is the goods. I think like the way he sees the field, his decision-making, he does have a good arm, the ball's out quick. That can help to mitigate some of this, but yeah, like that's a very valid criticism. Indiana is a very good football team. I haven't seen anything to say that they're a great football team or they can hang with the teams that have big-time athletes who are also really well coached and clicking this year.
Yeah, this is the kind of win, if Indiana gets it, you can't move the goalposts, which is what has happened to Indiana the last 2 years. Like, last year, we didn't know if they were any good. They went to that Nebraska game. It's like, all right, this is the first real test. They crushed Nebraska, and then the response is, well, it's because Nebraska stinks. And this year, they go out, they play Illinois, a team that was ranked in the top 10 at the time, beat them by 53, and it's like, well, actually, it's because Illinois kind of stinks. They're really not a top 10 team. If Indiana goes on the road and beats Oregon, you can't say it's because Oregon stinks, because we all know what Oregon truly is. So I do feel like this is really an excellent litmus test for who the Hoosiers are. And I personally think that this is a very good team because, Bud, to your point, they don't recruit 4 and 5 stars. They're not a blue chip ratio team. But the guys that they have brought in through the transfer portal under Kurt Cignetti, who are all now juniors and seniors, are very developed. They are very experienced, and they are talented. You can argue that bringing in a good G5 player through the transfer portal is kind of like getting a 4 or a 5-star high school recruit at that point. It's what you're hoping they turn into. So I do think talent-wise, there's clearly a gap between what Oregon and Indiana have. But I don't think it's that wide, not this year. I feel like if there's a time for Indiana to show us that they're actually worthy of being included at this level of team and discussed with these level of teams, this is a game to do so. That doesn't mean they have to win the game, but if they go on the road and they're competitive at Autzen Stadium against the Oregon Ducks, I think it tells you a lot about who they are.
What does it take to win, Tom? Like, what if we're sitting here with Oregon we're obviously praising Oregon. We're trying to make sure that we've got context for the Indiana analysis. So what does an Indiana win look like if they are to go into Eugene and come out with a victory?
Turnovers. Get them. I mean, you're going to have to pressure Dante Moore. You're going to have to get him to make a few mistakes. You're going to have to take advantage of him if he does. And if you're Fernando Mendoza, live up to that NFL potential that you have, the kind that has you going in the early first round of mock drafts, because you've certainly got the body size, you've certainly got the arm, and you have shown the flashes of it. But these are the games that if you play well in, that's when the NFL scouts notice. If he goes on the road and he gets, he moves the ball around, he picks this Oregon defense apart, he stands in the pocket and takes hits like the one he took against Iowa a few weeks ago, where he took a shot right to the jaw and waited for his guy to come open and just threw an absolute dart. If he's able to do that on the road against Oregon, Indiana can win this game.
I think they have to do a really good job of like exploiting the linebackers for Oregon, right? Like to me, that's we really didn't see Penn State do that, exploit them in coverage. That's not really something Drew Aller does very well. And that's something I think Indiana really could do because of how quickly Mendoza gets the ball out. So that's what I want to look for here.
Turnovers and big plays. Think about how Penn State got back in the game against Oregon. They hit the big touchdown pass to Devontae Ross. Indiana's shown some firepower to hit those big plays. Granted, a lot of it was against Illinois when they did have a lot of those players out. But I don't envision Indiana lining up and taking those long, sustained drives. Sure, they might have 1 or 2, but I do think hitting on those big plays is one way to neutralize some of that talent gap, take the crowd out of the game, and then forcing turnovers, another great way. They've got to get an interception, a fumble, something. They've got to force the issue and have Oregon, they have to win the turnover battle.
Well, it is going to be 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 12:30 local, out from Autzen Stadium in Eugene, where they just stand and yell just the whole time. Just a loud, aggressive yell. And it will be quite the environment. We are very excited to bring it to you. You can watch it on CBS. You can stream it on Paramount Plus. It is big time. Top 10 matchup, Indiana out at Oregon.